Welcome back again. This is Munster Mash, or Rob, as you may know me, from the SC Hub for Captain Hindsight, the podcast we do that covers who should get the armbands in NRL SuperCoach, the vice captains and captains for those that don't know that. Round 4. It's going into this week. It's very much a who had Ruben Garrick and who didn't. So we'll dive into the options for this week. We'll cover a little bit of what happened last week, and I'll also go a little bit in depth with how things will change slightly going forward, but I'll cover that in a bit. So this week, there aren't a lot of options that really stand out for the armbands. But before we dive into that, obviously, look, this is YouTube. Like and subscribe to all of our videos. It really helps us at the SC Hub get the content out to you guys, the listeners who, obviously consume this content. Also, please leave any comments about your armbands or who you think could be a good choice in the comments. We can discuss that in the lead up to the games over the weekend. So anyway, diving back into the armbands, the choices that we made last week were Payne Haas and Kalen Ponga. Now, anybody that had the VC on Payne would have looped him, I would assume. If you didn't, tough luck. But yeah, great choice great score from Payne. He is just an absolute beast mode at the moment. Arguably the best player that we've ever seen at prop in SuperCoach. It's ridiculous what he's putting out at the moment. But as I alluded to just before and mentioned, he was not the top scorer of the week, despite scoring 140. That went to, as part of Captain Hindsight, Ruben Garrick. I don't think anyone saw this score come in without Tom Trbojevic in the team. 157, just 4 tries. New dad for one day, as we've all heard. Just a ridiculous score, and congrats to everyone that has Ruben Garrick. So anyway, forgetting last week, SuperCoach, and as we do, we roll on to the next round, have another shot at nailing that top score. So the first thing that I want to sort of cover for the week is not somebody from the first games, but I think someone who will shape the whole week and how you decide to go with your armbands. And that is Payne Haas. As I mentioned before, he's just an absolute beast mode at the moment. He's averaging 114 for the season. That is ridiculous. Even though we are only 3 games in, it's ridiculous. He's up against the Dolphins this week, who have not shown the most resolve in defense. So we know it's a Suncorp high-scoring field. This could be another huge score coming in. Now, so for that, I think if you give him VC or the C, I think both are legitimate options, especially with the rain that'll be around the East Coast this weekend. That could limit some of the top scores for somebody like, say, a Tom Trbojevic, that I know a lot of people will be picking for the C. So with the rain around, it could be a safer option to go for Payne. He's shown currently that whatever he gets is going to be a good captaincy score. So it could be worth playing it a little bit safer and going for Payne as your C option, in which case you'll need to pick a VC from the first 2 games, which is Panthers and the Bunnies, and the Roosters and the Gold Coast. Now, I actually found a very good scorer from these games, and somebody that is an absolute super pod at the moment if you're looking to go that route in SuperCoach, and that is our mascot and absolute legend of SuperCoach, James Tedesco. So He's flying a little bit under the radar at the moment and is owned by less than 5% of super coaches. He's had a 73.3 average for the season so far, 2 lower scores with 1 bigger score. But he loves playing the Gold Coast, absolutely loves playing them. We can see here his average for his career against them is 92. His last 2 scores he's only played them generally once a year for the last few years. So his last 2 scores are there, as you can see there, 130 and 134. And his average against them over the last 5 games is 125. That is fantastic. So for anyone that's looking to grab a Pappenhausen or a Gutherson this week, they're probably the better choices for cash, as Tedesco will probably either hold his price or maybe lose a little bit with his current BE. But if he scores this big score here, he might actually go up like a small amount, like 5K, but he might go up a bit of money actually if he scores his average of what he's done against the Gold Coast recently. So I really like that as a play for any of the pod hunters out there, and for anyone maybe even looking to throw. I think he's a good VC option. I wouldn't go the C because of the rain, but I think he's a really, really good VC option. Just loves the Gold Coast. So to the surprise of no one this week, the top choice for captaincy is Tom Trbojevic. He's the absolute standout choice. With the way that the games have gone this week and the way that the season's gone, we know that there's now starting to be a few teams that are looking like they're the ones to target when you're picking your captaincy. So that's teams playing the Eels, teams playing the Cowboys, though that may be changing after their game against the Broncos. And I would almost put the Dolphins in there, but we'll see how that goes over the next couple of weeks. They're sort of averaging the same points conceded as they did last year. So we'll see if that gets worse, and we'll see how it goes with them. But yeah, definitely the Eels and the Cowboys, they're the 2 worst defensive teams at the moment. They've conceded the most points. So I think they're the ones that to be targeting, specifically the Eels. They are just not looking all that great at the moment. But they did have a good game against the Doggies, but Manly at 4 Pines or Brookie is a whole nother proposition. And we saw what the Storm could do to them earlier in the season. So look, we've covered it before. I think everyone's very well aware just how good Tom Trbojevic is when he's fit, and at home, it's a ridiculous average. We can see here his recent history against the Eels is not standout, but he has got 100 in his last few scores, an 82.1 average against them across his career. So not too bad. I think the main thing that's going to hold him up is rain. If it's too wet or it's particularly muddy and slippery, I think that could limit the ceiling of his score. So maybe a 120 instead of a 140 potentially. But look, we've seen what Tommy can do against anybody, and I think go with the crowd on this one. He's the most popular choice. Back him in. I think you'll get the C. I think for most people. Now, if you don't have Tom Trbojevic, and I know a few people did sell him last week to help fund trades and things like that, I wouldn't necessarily bring him back in just for this game. The Manly draw does get quite hard after this. So, I wouldn't be bringing him back in. But if you didn't have Tom, you most likely have the man from last week, Ruben Garrick. His average for the season is 99, so he's had a really good start. And funnily enough, he actually averages better than Tommy does against the Eels. You can see there, he's got an average of 88.7 against them over his career. His most recent 3 scores are all really good. So, and if Manly does well, so should Ruben. He's the goal kicker. But once again, we're not quite sure how the rain's going to affect this game. and just how much that limits the scores. The one thing we will also say is anybody that's listened to other podcasts and maybe look at some of the stats for last round, he was a bit down in base, but ended up just scoring 4 tries. So that could be something to keep in mind. If his base consistently stays down, maybe that's something to take into consideration and maybe not put C on him. Who knows? As I mentioned, yeah, it might be better just going with Payne and going with that safe score. Now, there's a few other players that I looked into, but weren't particularly great or didn't look like they were going to have high scores. So yeah, so if you were going for like the C on Payne, Haas, maybe put the VC on somebody like a Tino, or have a fly at one of the Panthers. If you've still got anybody there, like a Yo could be good, or even maybe like a Brian To'o, if you've got him in your team. It's, yeah. The stats didn't particularly read amazing, but there's worse options to have a go with. But anyway, for this week, to the surprise of a few, the choices that I have made for Captain Hindsight are VC James Tedesco into C Tommy Turbo. It's, yeah, the Teddy Turbo combo, rolling back the years. The stats for Teddy is just, they're too good against the Gold Coast. I can't go against him, even though Payne Haas could outscore both of these guys quite easily. So it was, yeah, I think he just edged Payne purely on history and purely on the stats. But yeah, Tommy, I think, is the obvious captaincy choice. He could do absolutely anything against the Eels. We've seen in the past he's had, his ceiling's over 200. I don't think you'll get that, but I definitely think we could be looking at a big 100 plus score here. So let's hope for anybody that puts the C on him. If you've got the guts, maybe a C on Payne or somebody like that. Instead. But anyway, I'll leave it there. So thank you for listening. Sorry. And as I mentioned it earlier, I will be going a little bit more in depth with the stats going forward. Now that we're starting to get a decent sample size for this season, I think that's really important to consider going forward. So with the early rounds, it's obviously something you can't do. So we need to look at the history and really consider that when making our choices. But that doesn't take into consideration how teams are going this year or how players going this year as much. So that'll be something I'll be diving into a lot more going forward. Trying to look at also then matchups with teams that are weaker, where points are conceded. We'll try to go into a bit more depth, and hopefully we can pick up some really nice little pod choices going forward, or just so you can get that edge against your friends and family in your head-to-heads, and also climb those ranks in overall. But as I mentioned earlier, we'll leave it there. So once again, like and subscribe. Make your comments about who your armbands are going to be in the comments below. We can get the discussion going. If you're not in the SE Hub, join the Discord. It's fantastic resource. I'll go on and on about that the whole season. But anyway, good luck with your super coaching this weekend, and we'll catch you next round.